Hey guys, before we go any further, just a quick disclaimer. I am not a therapist in any way, shape or form. I'm just here giving you ways in which I dealt with my mental health. Without further ado, let's jump right into this week's episode.
Can you hear
Yeah,
me? Okay.
yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you loud and clear. So let me
Hi.
just stop this. It's just going to say, I was having a few issues trying to get the whole thing set up.
Oh,
Because it's
yeah?
season 2, it's everything's changing for me, if you know what I mean. So I'm
Yeah, no
trying to get
worries.
new things into perspective. But no, thank you very much for reaching out and wanting to come on. I've read most of your story. Obviously, I'm not going to tell anybody on the podcast. I want you to be able to tell that from a
Sure.
first person perspective. Is there any questions you would like me to ask you?
Nothing in particular. Whatever you want. I'm pretty open, like just, to talk about the work and uh, the possibilities. So whatever you think your listeners would be interested in.
No, fantastic. Sorry, because I don't know anything about this. I'll be honest with you, with this subject. I've heard about it on movies,
Mm-hmm.
but I was just fascinated with the story how someone can rewire the brain circuit to
Yes.
change their ways. If I find that fascinating, I'm imagining there's quite a lot of people listening that will
Mm.
also find this very fascinating as well. But before we go any further, I'll quickly do an intro.
Okay.
So, welcome everybody to episode 2 of season 2. Today I'm joined by a very wonderful lady who goes by the name of Barbara Arrowsmith-Young. There's not a lot really to say that I can say because this person is amazing. She's got books on Amazon. She's changed the world. I even looked on our national newspapers in the UK, The Guardian, and she also has an article on there about what she's done. There's not many magnificent people in this world that have achieved something so amazing. So, Barbara, welcome to Still Worth the Journey.
My pleasure. I'm really happy to be here and share my story and my work.
That's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. My dog's going nuts, as we can hear. Sprocker Spaniel. She's always going nuts. But yeah, so whereabouts are you at the moment? Where are you based?
I'm based in Toronto, Canada, and we're just getting a big snowstorm here today. We're supposed to get, I think, 15 centimeters of snow, so it'll be interesting. We've had a very mild winter, so I guess it just felt like the beginning of spring. We had to have a snowstorm. So
Oh,
yes,
wow. Yeah, I
yeah.
do like Canada. I watch a lot of the Alaskan truckers up there,
Mm,
which is quite cool. So let me just text my daughter one moment because
no worries.
my dog is going absolutely nuts. And I'm sorry to anybody listening to this. She's on a special time of the month, if you know what I mean. So she's very alert to
Yeah.
everything that's going on around her. Just text my daughter just to let her know, just to keep an eye on what's going on. Thought I settled her down, to be fair, just before I come up. Right, aeroplane mode. So we can edit this bit out anyway, so we can continue. So sorry about that. So we'll start again. So in Canada, have you always lived in Canada? Have you travelled across?
I've always lived in Canada. I was born and bred here, but I've done a lot of traveling, mainly through my work. So, my goal is to build awareness for the positive impact of neuroplasticity on the brain that has the potential to transform lives, and my life first, because I developed this work for myself. So yes, I've been to the UK. I've been to throughout Europe, Canada, the United States, the Middle East. So yes, I've done quite a bit of traveling to do presentations and, as I said, talk about this work.
Amazing. So
Yeah.
what did you call it? Neuroplasticity.
Neuroplasticity, yeah. So it's a big word for just the idea that our brain is capable of change, right? When I started my schooling, which was a lot of years ago in the 1950s, the belief was our brain was fixed, right? So the idea was if you have a learning difficulty, which I did and was identified in grade 1, there was nothing you could really do about it, right? Because our brain was fixed, it couldn't change. And so you kind of had to accept, this was the idea, you had to accept if you had areas of challenge or difficulty, you would always struggle. And so in grade one, I heard my grade one teacher tell my mother that all of my schooling would be a struggle, that, not to have high expectations, um, because I was going to, the difficulties I was showing in grade one, I would have throughout my schooling. And now we know with this idea of neuroplasticity, which just means our brain is capable of changing, right? Through exercise, through stimulation. We can change our brain physiologically, like, so we can grow new dendrites, which are make the synaptic connections, which make better communication, better neurotransmission in the brain. We can increase neurotransmitters. We can increase glia cells. Like, basically, we can change the brain physiologically, which then leads to better functioning, which is like better ability to learn. So that's what neuroplasticity means, and we can change it in positive ways and negative ways, right? Like, positive ways are through stimulation and the kind of work that I do, and negative ways are where we don't get enough sleep over a long term. We have chronic stress. We can actually lead to negative changes in the brain. But the good thing is, even if we lead to negative changes, we can apply positive neuroplasticity and reverse those. So to me, this idea of neuroplasticity is really promising. It means that we don't have to accept, challenges or difficulties or limitations like I was told that I had to in grade one. And that's the whole basis of my work. So, when I started school, I struggled to learn how to read. I struggled to learn how to write. Like, I basically wrote things backwards. If I was asked to add some numbers, I just add them randomly. I didn't know to add in columns. I would go across, up and down, backwards, upside down. And my teacher didn't really understand learning difficulties because there wasn't a lot of information at that time. And in fact, the term learning disability didn't even exist when I started school. Didn't come into existence for probably another 15 years. So I was identified as being slow, and my teacher, she was frustrated by me because she didn't know how to educate me, and I was frustrated because it wasn't a good experience, right? Like, I was working really hard, but I couldn't do the things that the other students in the class could do. I could see them learning how to read, learning how to write, and it just wasn't happening for me. So, as children do, I would put up my hand and go to the washroom and spend 30 minutes in the washroom. Like, basically, I was avoiding the classroom because it was so stressful. And the one thing that my teacher was accurate about in grade one was that all of my schooling was a struggle. Like, I can't think of a single day that I was excited about going to school or I enjoyed going to school, because I just didn't learn like other children. And my mother was an educator, so she taught me how to read and taught me how to write. I'd come home at lunch and she would have flashcards. I'd come home after school and she'd have flashcards. So I basically learned those skills, but it didn't address the learning difficulty. Like, I still struggled with comprehension, with understanding, and yeah. So my schooling was a struggle, and even making friends was challenging because the part of my brain that really understood people wasn't working well. So I would listen to somebody, but I didn't understand. It was almost like they were speaking a foreign language and my translator wasn't working, even though they were speaking English. It was that whole part of comprehension. So I, socially struggled. I struggled academically. And part of my brain that was involved in knowing where my body was in space wasn't really working. So I wasn't good on the sports field either. Like, I was clumsy and awkward. So, I kind of felt like a bit of a misfit, growing up. I didn't fit in any of the realms that were available for me. So, it led to anxiety and depression and struggle. And I was lucky that my father was an inventor and a scientist. And he said, if there's a problem in the world and no solution, he said, it's your job to go out and find a solution. And then he said, if the rest of the world tells you you can't do it, he said, that's conventional wisdom and don't listen. He said, it's your responsibility to try to find a solution and don't listen to those people that are naysayers. So I thought, I have no idea how I'm going to go about find a solution to my difficulty. But in August of 1977, someone handed me a book that changed my life, and it was called The Man with a Shattered World. It was written by a brilliant Russian neuropsychologist, Alexander Luria. And it told the story of a Russian soldier who in World War II had a very localized head injury. And as I read this book and this man's description of his struggles, I thought, he's telling my life, right? He was describing the things that he couldn't do. I was now 25 years old. I couldn't tell time. I couldn't read a watch. Right? This man, before his injury, could. After that, he couldn't. He couldn't make connections. He couldn't understand why things happened. So after reading this book, I thought, now I know where my problem is. It's something in my brain that's not working properly, because to find a solution for a problem, you have to understand the nature of the problem. So now I had like an address for the problem. And then what do I do about it? The next piece of the puzzle was work coming out of Berkeley in California with a brilliant psychologist, Mark Rosenzweig, which was he was studying neuroplasticity, but with rats, right? So he found that if you put rats in a really enriched environment with lots of toys to play with, lots of stimulation, their brains changed physiologically. They had more dendrites, more neurotransmitters, better communication. And so the idea was, stimulation led to changes in the brain, and then they were better at learning mazes. So they're better navigating in their environment. So I thought, if rats can change their brain, surely humans could change their brain, because that's where my problem was. And I was studying at the University of Toronto at that time, and I went to all my professors and said, I'm really, really excited. I think I understand my problem. It's, something in my brain isn't working. And they said, at that time, the belief was learning difficulties had nothing to do with the brain. I mean, now we know they do. And then they said, and even if they do, your brain is fixed. So there's nothing you can do about it. And I thought, what my father's, words of wisdom were, don't listen, go out and try. So I thought, I have to see if I can create an exercise or an activity to stimulate my brain, just like those rats. And I figured, as I said, if rats have neuroplasticity, humans must have neuroplasticity. And so I set out to create an exercise. I read, Lurie's work to try to understand what that part of the brain does. What could I do to stimulate it? And over time, I worked really, really diligently. And at a certain point, it's like my world changed. I could now understand when people talk to me. Before, I used to say I lived in what I called lag time. I didn't live in real time because I was always hours behind everybody else in understanding everything. Now I could listen as somebody was talking, I could understand as they were talking, and I could actually have a conversation because I could be part of that dialogue. Whereas before, I couldn't. I could read a math textbook and understand it. Before, I couldn't. I could read a philosophy book and I could understand as I was reading. Before, I might have to read the page 10, 20, 30 times. Now I could read it once. So I knew something fundamentally had changed because I could do things that before, with the best will in the world and incredible effort, I couldn't do. And so I realized, yes, there is human neuroplasticity, and I'm living proof. And then I created 2 more exercises for that spatial problem I had, that lack of coordination difficulty. And I saw those changes where now I can play sports. I don't bump into things. I know where my body is. I don't, dent the side of my car, because if I didn't know where my body was in space, I didn't know where that car was in space. And I thought, this is amazing. The brain is capable of change. And instead of just being happy that I had changed, I decided I want to help other people. And that was the beginning of my work. So I opened a school here in Toronto in 1980. And then I think it was the mid 1990s, I thought, I have to take this work out of just my school, because not everybody can come to Toronto,
Yeah.
and started training teachers and clinicians around the world. So children adults. We've worked with people up into their 80s can benefit from this work. And I think now we're in 13 or 14 countries with the work, and that's my passion. I want every child in the world to have access. That's my plan and my commitment. I don't know whether I'll realize that, in my lifetime, but I've got a great team that works with me, and no child should struggle with learning.
Yeah.
That's my commitment. And we've also worked with people with addiction. So we did a research study in Australia and saw the changes as we rewired the brain in a positive direction. We working with people with acquired and traumatic brain injury and seen the change. Basically, if you've got a brain, we can enhance cognition through these programs, and currently have programs for 19 different cognitive functions. So it went beyond just the 3 that I worked on, because people would come to me and they wouldn't all have the same problems I had. So then I would have to go back into read Luria, try to understand, what part of the brain, where's their difficulty coming from, create exercises, and then track them. And, we've got lots and lots of research showing what's happening in the brain, showing what's happening in terms of learning and even social emotional well-being changes. Because if you understand your world, you feel better about yourself, right? You can relate to people. I couldn't really relate to people socially before. Now I can. I have a wide network. So I've sort of been rambling on, but
No,
that's
it's
sort of my
interesting.
story.
It's so interesting, and you come across so articulated as well. So there's definitely no learning disability there that I can see. It's proofs in the pudding right there.
Mm,
I've struggled all my life with dyslexia. I can't spell.
mm,
I can read the word, I can't
mm,
spell the word.
mm,
And like you said, when you're reading a page, I totally get that, because I used to have to go over it and over it because
mm,
I can't read pages properly. I'm more better being practical. So if someone shows me how to do it,
mhm,
I've got it. But if you tell me to read a textbook, I might be there for ages because I don't quite understand the question.
mhm,
And it happened to me recently. I'm a truck driver, you see, by trade. That's what I do. This was here because I had my own mental breakdown a few years back in
mm,
2017, and I wanted to help people that went through the
mm,
same thing as me, because the help wasn't there. Well, it was, but it was just so far in the future that it was
mm,
pointless. It was like, well, I need to help
mm,
now. So similar to you, I did my own research. How can I help? What can I do? And I learnt meditation, which I used to think was silly back then. I
mm,
thought, I don't want to do that, but it helps. It was just calming
mm,
music. But yeah, I used to go to the port, and on these ports, you needed to complete health and safety checks. So you
mm,
understand the rules of the site, the speed limits, the hard hats, the PPE, what happened, what do you need to do in the case of emergency. And I failed it 3 times in a row, and I just like, I can't get this. I don't. So
mm,
what I actually did was I went inside, I spoke to the port police, and I said, "Can you please read this out to me, and
mhm.
then I will give you the answer." And I passed it first time.
Wow. Yeah.
So, but I'm still like that, and
Yeah.
so listening to you now, that you've managed to do that, and then you've got 19. Did you say 19 other
Yeah.
spectrums as well,
Yeah.
sort of
Yes.
thing that you could?
Yeah.
How does one even come up with that? How
Yeah.
did you think? I know that you've obviously seen that people are doing this on rats and stuff like that, and as they call them, guinea pigs.
Mm.
What made you feel it could be done on humans, and then how did you execute that?
Yeah. Well, it's a really good question. I didn't know whether it could be done on humans, right? But I figured I have to try because of my struggles, right? I was pretty depressed.
Yeah,
I felt like there was no future. I had my own kind of breakdown, and I didn't see a future. So I thought I have to try. Like, and I had no idea whether I would be successful or not, but I thought, you know, I have to try. And going back in and reading Luria's work to try to understand, like, the idea is like to try to understand what is the job of that part of the brain, right? It's kind of, if you think about physiotherapy, which is a bit different, but what is the job of this muscle or another muscle, and then they work that specific muscle. So for me, it was
yeah,
trying to understand what is the job of that part of the brain, or that network in the brain, and then how do I make it work, just like you go to the gym and you start with 5 pounds and then you move up to 10 pounds and then 15 pounds. It was the
Yeah, yeah,
idea of like mental weightlifting, but targeted to the job of that part of the brain. Um, and sometimes, some of the things I came up with didn't work, and they ended up in the waste bin, because. But over time, working with people, first myself and then other people, and getting the feedback from them, like it was like a series of kind of experiments,
yeah,
and seeing eventually, yes, this is what works. This is the job of that part of the brain. This is how we exercise it, or this is how we make it have a workout. And then once again, the idea like weightlifting, if you go and lift 5 pounds, but you get really fast at that and it's no longer strain, you have to increase the level of strain.
yeah,
So the
yeah,
same thing with the brain, like, you start where it's just a little bit hard. And then once that no longer is difficult, you make it a little more difficult, right? Like it's, calibrating the level of difficulty. So it was really experimentation, trial and error, using myself as the first subject, right, to
yeah.
experiment on and seeing the results, and then saying, I want to work, I want to help other people, and listening very deeply as they came in, right? Listening to them describe the challenges they had, go back in and read in Lurie's work to try to understand the part of the brain, and then come up with an activity that I thought would do a mental workout for that part of the brain. And that was, I started this long time, 45 years ago. Um, and so over the years, really refining the programs. And now we have research showing that the brain is changing as students go through this work, like that those areas that are underperforming or underconnected start to strengthen in their connectivity, that they start to be able to understand, process information. Their academic, like spelling, as you talked about, improves their, depending on where their difficulty is, or their ability to read and comprehend as they're reading. We have programs for people that have face blindness, people that can't recognize other people's faces, right? So that
All right,
affects
yeah,
them.
I've heard of that. Yeah,
Yeah, that affects them socially. So imagine, I had this one lovely woman I worked with, and she had a big problem with face blindness. And once she was in the grocery store and someone came up and said hello to her, and
yeah.
clearly this person knew her, it was her therapist that she'd worked with for like 4 years, and she didn't recognize her. That's how significant her face blindness was. So it was
Oh,
really awkward socially. Like,
it's
people
quite
thought
sad
she
as
was
well.
rude.
Yeah, it's really sad as well. That.
Yeah, oh, very sad. And her sons, who obviously knew she had this problem, so when someone would come to the door, they would say, "Hey, Mom, isn't it nice that Alex is here?" So as soon as she heard the name, she would know who the person was, but she wouldn't recognize their face. So to me, this work has taught me a lot of compassion. That sometimes we think, everybody's brain is wired the same way our brains are wired, but they aren't, right? So let's try to understand how different people see the world given how their brain is wired. And I was talking to someone this morning and I said, if you're diabetic, there's no shame in, you maybe have to have insulin, right? There's no
Yeah,
stigma. But still, with a learning difficulty, there's stigma, like it's somehow the person isn't intelligent. Well, people with learning difficulties are very intelligent. There's, just a part of the brain that isn't performing at the level of the other areas. And we can strengthen that. And even if we don't strengthen it, they're intelligent, right? I think we do, a disservice, and there shouldn't be no stigma, right? We all have our own unique profiles. We all see the world in our own unique ways, and we all have gifts to contribute to the world. And my gift was bringing the practical application of neuroplasticity to help people, um, improve or enhance their cognitive ability to be more able to engage in the world comfortably.
it's almost like that movie Lucy, where she can use more than 10% of her brain, and
Mm,
she can calculate things quicker as well because of her brain. For me, I wouldn't know the first thing. So lifting weights, I totally understand because I'm physically lifting the weight. And I
Hmm.
know if I eat enough food, I get the right calories in, the right proteins, I know that's going to grow over time. But for so, if someone was to come to me, or like your dad, great inspiration, being an
Hmm.
inventor and a scientist, and he's telling you, forget about the naysayers. If you want something, you got to change the world. This is that one thing. You've come up with it. It could change the whole world, like quite literally. I'd imagine there's quite a lot of people that are studying this now since you've brought it to the attention of the world. So it's almost like an Einstein state, isn't it? It's something that's magnificent. Um, but I wouldn't know how to, like, literally. I couldn't even sit here and think, right, how do I change? How do I even? Because in my head, I'm like, well, no, I need brain surgery to even tamper with the neurons. Like, so
Hmm.
that's a super intelligent brain that you've got straight away thinking like that. Like, how would you train it? How? What are these exercises?
Yeah, so they're all different. So for each of the cognitive functions, so one that people often find makes sense. So let's say there's a certain aspect of dyslexia where the person doesn't recognize, like, doesn't easily memorize symbol patterns. So like words, right? So
Yeah,
it's part of the brain that, if you're good here, you can, look at the word cat written down, you can close your eyes and you kind of visualize it in your mind's eye, right? You
yeah.
hold the visual image of symbol patterns, right? So it's important for reading, it's important for spelling. So the exercise that I created for that is you take foreign languages, right? Because the idea with an exercise is you don't want the brain to be able to compensate. And when it compensates, it's using other areas to do the job of the area you're trying to work. So if we used English, somebody might put sounds to it, they'd be familiar. So we
Or
use,
memories.
exactly. So we use foreign symbols because people aren't familiar with those. So like, Sinhalese, Telugu, Urdu, Burmese, all sorts. I think I have like 40 some different languages. And we have a process, it's a computer program where the individual starts with a very simple language. Like it wouldn't start with Chinese, which is very complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they have to go through a process of looking at the symbols, closing their eyes, trying to visualize the symbols. And at first, it's really hard because that part of the brain isn't good at that, right? But over time, and we gradually make it more and more difficult. But by the end of the program, the individual is able to hold in their mind's eye 8 Chinese characters, and at that point English is pretty easy, right? So again, it's not, the idea is we're not teaching a skill. We're not teaching the person how to spell. We're not teaching them how to read. We're changing the brain's ability to recognize symbol patterns. So as they go through that program, what you see is their ability to spell improves, their ability to read improves, even to learn math equations or chemical formulas, like anything that's kind of a visual pattern starts to improve. So that's the idea. Find the job of the part of the brain if it's holding visual symbol patterns, and then how can we stimulate that? So that's one example, and each different part of the brain is has a different program. And one of the benefits of COVID was, our program was in schools all around the world. And obviously, COVID closed the doors of all those physical schools. So we had to adapt to make our program available online. So now people that live in a place where we don't actually have a physical location to offer the program can access our work online. And that makes it more accessible, which is my goal to, so somebody from anywhere in the world can access the work through online programs.
Absolutely amazing. Brings in a whole new mainstream as well, and resources, doesn't it, for your team? I'd imagine to do more research, getting in
Mhm.
that different part of monetization as well, if you like. And not only that, that you can reach places where they're less fortunate to have schools, places like in Africa, I'd imagine as well, where the schooling just isn't there. Or I imagine
Mhm.
there's quite a few of poorer countries that don't have the curriculum or the research or the staff there to at least teach some of these kids that, look, you're not stupid. You
Mhm.
just need to rewire the brain the way that it works, the way that it thinks. And the way that
Exactly.
you're doing it opened my eyes when you said try and learn. So I've obviously been trying to learn Spanish, trying to
Mm.
understand. the different words, amigo, amiga, and stuff like that for the female, because they have feminine and male words, I believe.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's a lot different to English. Plus, in England, we have a lot of slang words, if you like. So in different accents across the United Kingdom, everything can mean different things. Like, I don't know if you know what a bap is.
No.
A bap, it's like a bun, like a bread
Oh,
bun
okay.
or
Okay.
bread roll. So that has about 16 different names in the UK, and you can ask it for anywhere up and down, and I'll be like, I don't know what you're on about. Oh, that's a batch. Oh, that's a cob. You know, it's got so many different names. So when you are trying to learn all these things, I know it's a bit different, because obviously that's names of different items, but in your head, because your brain doesn't know those words, take away the word that you already know in English and try and learn something totally new to strengthen that part of the brain. But again, how do you know what part of the brain does what? So say for someone like myself that suffer with depression and anxiety, I worry quite a lot with anxiety, like self-esteem kind of thing. What part of the brain will need to be worked on for that type of thing? So if someone does suffer with, I mean, we have a lot of listeners that suffer with depression, anxiety as well, and overthinking. Like, I overthink all the time.
Yeah.
We had a lovely lady on last season who told me it's called your naughty monkey. Just give your thoughts to the naughty monkey, and he would hold on to it forever.
Yeah.
So is there a way of actually bringing that to the mental health table, which could open up avenues as well?
Yeah, certainly there is, and the work that we're doing with addiction, and what I would, if people are interested, on our website, there's a questionnaire that people can do for free. So the website's arrowsmith.ca. It's my middle name.ca, and it's a great, just find the questionnaire. It takes about 20 minutes to do, and at the end, it will give you a report based on your answers, looking at the different cognitive areas, like the 19 areas, and it'll say, here's what it looks like based on what you've told us, that maybe this is your cognitive profile and areas. And then what you can do is read more on the website about those areas and see, does that fit for you? And then that will tell you what are the ones for each individual that are meaningful or relevant. And that's what I would recommend, is do the questionnaire on the website. And it's all confidential, because we're all unique, right? We're unique in terms of our cognitive makeup. Like, doesn't mean that we have different regions of the brain, but we have different strengths and areas of challenge. So that would be the starting point, is to check out that questionnaire. And then those would be the areas that are identified. If they, based on reading, are matched, those are the areas that would be recommended. And in terms of anxiety and depression, it's looking at, is that a result of some of these cognitive difficulties? Absolutely can be. In my case, it was. And though there can be cases where it's more been unrelated, like there are people that have a pretty even profile, but struggle with anxiety or depression. So the first place is look at the profile, do the questionnaire, and then see what's there. And then, if people want, they can, there's an email address they can email and have a discussion around the profile, or they can look at, the different programs where they're offered, online, to see if they want to do something. The first level is having insight and understanding, right? If you have more understanding in terms of what makes one tick, it gives us sort of compassionate insight. And then the next step is, does somebody want to do something about it to strengthen those areas? So that would be the place to start, and my recommendation.
Sorted. I'm going to give that a go. So that's Arrowsmith.
Arrowsmith.ca, Arrowsmith.ca, and this, then there's a search feature, and just put in questionnaire, right, and it should bring up the cognitive questionnaire. As I said, it takes about 20 minutes. There are lots of questions. We've done a lot of research on it, and then it'll give you a report saying, out of the 19 areas, here are the ones that you've identified, and then it will give you some more information to say, does this fit or not? And then at the end, it gives you a report.
Oh, fantastic. I'm definitely going to give that a go. I will post that link onto the Facebook page as well for Still Worth the Journey, and put it in the links below as well for anyone listening if you want to get in touch with that. So it's arrowsmith.ca. Do the questionnaire. It takes about 20 minutes. as Barbara mentioned. So when you finally accomplished this and you realised, what test did you do on yourself that you thought, before I start pushing this out, what was that defining moment in your life, and how emotional were you when you realised that? Wow.
Yeah, well, when I got my breakthrough, like from the first program that I developed for myself, it was like walking on air. It was exhilarating, right? Because it was, my life had been an incredible struggle. Like I in school, um, when I got in the higher grades, I was sleeping 4 hours a night, working 20 hours a day just to tread water, right? Because everything was just so hard to understand. And so now it was certainly much more efficient because I could just understand as things were happening. Like I remember I was, the program 60 Minutes. I think you have that in the UK, the news program.
Yeah, yeah,
I used to watch that, but I didn't really understand it. And it's not really that complicated a program. But I used to watch it with a friend, and he would interpret, like he would help me understand what was happening in the program. And I remember sitting, watching it with my friend, and he was turning to explain to me, and I turned to him just before and explained what I'd just seen, right? Because now I understood it.
Ah,
And that
clever.
was incredible. Like, and before, didn't matter how hard I tried. Like, this is the power of, you change your brain and the things that it's designed to do just happen. Whereas before, because it wasn't working properly, everything took like 50 to 100 times more effort. And even with that effort, it wasn't efficient, right? It didn't work the way it was designed to work. And now I could just listen. And then, I had access to a philosophy library, and philosophy is it's conceptually dense. Like it's complicated to read philosophy and understand it. And I had really struggled. Really, I didn't understand it, or I'd read it over and over again and still didn't understand it. And now I took a book and I read the first page and I understood it, like without having to read it over. And I thought, okay, maybe this was a really easy book that I picked, right? So then I pulled another book off the shelf and read it and understood it. And by the time I was finished, I had probably a pile of 100 books all around me because I didn't trust it, right? Like, but I'd been
Wow.
able to read a page. So now I could read one page and understand it, then I could read the next page and understand it, and I could build. Like, it was like the whole world opened up, and then I could socialize because I could be in a conversation and understand what people were saying in real time as they were saying it.
Yeah.
And I could add my thoughts and ideas to
It's going
whereas
straight.
before
Yeah.
I'd sit there and smile, right? Because I didn't understand what people were saying. And then I'd walk away. And because I had a good memory, I'd remember what they said, and I'd play it over like a tape recorder for like a couple hours afterwards to try to understand. But those people didn't wait for those 2 hours for me to understand. So it was profound. So you asked me how I felt. I felt exhilarated. Like I felt like the blinders came off. All of a sudden, I wasn't in a fog anymore. I could understand my world. I started to understand people's motivations, why people did things, whereas before it was just confusing, right? Because I couldn't do cause and effect. I couldn't connect things. I couldn't say, oh, this is the reason that this happens. Now I could understand, like, and I felt like I had control in my world, whereas before I felt like things happened randomly, like I
Yeah.
didn't understand why things happened. So it was really, really significant. And then as I addressed the problem of being uncoordinated and clumsy and spatial difficulty, and then after seeing those changes, I thought I need to make this accessible to other people, right? It wasn't sufficient that I had benefited, right? And so I was on a mission after that. So first it was
Yeah.
exhilaration and really excitement, and then I felt like I've been given this gift of um, you know driving neuroplastic change in my brain. I want to help other people, and that was the beginning of my work, right? Which I'm continuing until I'm no longer here. And I've set up a foundation that when I am no longer here, everything goes into the foundation to keep this work going, right? So I just
In the history
I want,
books, wouldn't it?
yeah,
People will be
well,
learning about this in school in years to come. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know, but I feel very humbled that I've had the opportunity to do this, right? So, and I think we all, as I said before, like we all have our own unique gifts to give the world, whatever those are, right? Like, and it's let's show up and shine a light. Like you're still worth the journey. Absolutely, we're all on a journey, and we're all playing our part on that journey.
Yeah. So there was one thing when you were speaking about the breakthrough. There was a
Mm.
question that popped in my head, and because like it's almost like overnight intellect, if you like. When you're speaking to these people now, they're looking back, thinking, "Oh, she's adding her own conversation here. She understands what she's talking about." So the
Hmm.
question that kind of had on my head was, "Did you do an IQ test before and after?"
No, no, I didn't. I
Oh,
didn't. I
I thought
didn't.
it'd be so amazing just to see,
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
absolutely amazing. What does mum and dad think
Well,
when
they
this all happened?
were they went through a number of emotions. I mean, one, feeling very sad about my struggles, right? Because they
Yeah,
did the best they could, right? Like with the knowledge that there was, they did the best they could, and I'm grateful to my mother because I did learn to read and write because of like her intervention, and I'm grateful to my father because he instilled that drive in me to create this work, right? So and so I think they I mean they're no longer in the world, they're both deceased, but they saw the beginning of this work before they died, right? So I feel
oh,
yeah, very
made
very
them proud.
blessed. I was very lucky.
Yeah,
Certainly I wasn't appreciative in grade one, all the work that my mother made me do, but I'm very appreciative now because I don't know where I would have been without that intervention. And they believed in me as well, right? They
yeah.
believed that they didn't accept the teachers' limiting beliefs that I would never amount to anything.
Well, it shows with yourself as well. You had self belief as well to be able to pursue this and keep pushing this, and
Mm.
to knock people back when they say, "Oh, no, your brain's broken," kind of thing. You ain't going to learn
Mhm.
anything, because that must be really hurtful as well.
It,
Walking
it
around feeling lost.
yeah, it is, and I think if can do anything is really not deny people's realities, right? Like it's as educators, listen to your students, like listen very deeply, or even friends. Like if your friend is saying something as a challenge, listen to them and support them and help them rather
Yeah,
than discount it, right?
you have a lot of people like that nowadays, though, don't you?
Mm,
There's a lot of people out there that do that.
yeah.
It's like with me, but if someone's done something, say if I've done a mistake, a lot of times people will sugarcoat it or beat around the bush. But for me, I need to know
Hmm.
straight away, like direct. You have to be very direct with me, else I don't understand. And if
Hmm.
someone keeps talking and talking and talking, trying to explain something, I get lost. I'm like, I have no idea what you're on about. So if I've
Hmm.
done something wrong, even my works know, if I've done anything wrong, they won't indirect message me on text. They'll say, Jay, when you get back, you've done this wrong, because that's
Hmm.
how I need that communication. I'm still
Hmm.
wondering what that is. I still see things like it online quite a lot, but there's a lot of people out there at the moment that they kind of make fun
Yeah.
of these types of things, and they think it's trendy and cool
Yeah.
to portray that they're that, and it's like, it's quite harmful actually. It's quite hurtful when someone
Yeah.
make or mocks somebody else's issues in life. And like you said, you've got to understand the reality of different people and the way that they're made up, the different DNA, the different strands. I mean, did your mum and dad ever feel like it was their fault when it really wasn't their fault that you was having learning difficulty? It was just what it was.
Yeah, yeah, I'm not sure, because I grew up in the 50s and 60s, and we didn't talk about those things a lot, right? It's
You
much
don't
more
look old
open.
enough.
Yeah,
It's so, I
well, thank
can't
you.
believe it. You
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
look old enough. You've got
yeah,
super soft skin and all sorts. So
well,
when you're
thank you.
saying
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
yeah, it shocks me.
yeah. So, So we didn't really have those conversations. I mean, maybe they did. I'm not sure. Certainly, they um, believed in me. And the thing that I often say is, um, that was really positive. But my experience every day walking into that classroom, that was
Mm.
my reality. Because you spend what 5-6 hours a day, 5 days a
Yeah.
week in school, and no matter what my parents told me, my experience in the classroom was very different, right? Because
Yeah.
as I say, you look around and you can see the other students grasping, understanding, being able to do the things that for me were an incredible struggle. So um, it's and then with the power, like you change the brain, so then it's can do what it's designed to do, right? I mean, it can learn in the ways it's designed to learn, and that was incredibly powerful. I mean, it took me because I was, I think, 26 when I created the work. And then
That's
it took me a
amazing.
number of years to address the emotional pieces, right? Because they didn't just go away overnight. Like I'd lived 26 years,
Yeah.
with low self esteem, feeling I was not intelligent, because that was my experience. And then over time, and I got support in therapy, but now I could benefit from therapy. Whereas before, I could have sat in therapy for years, and because I wouldn't understand, like I wouldn't be able to have insight. I couldn't connect things. I couldn't understand things. It would not have benefited me. But now I could benefit because I could understand, grasp concepts. And so it took some time also to heal the emotional trauma of having the learning difficulties, right? But I couldn't have done that until I'd addressed the learning difficulties. So, just like the work that we're doing in Teen Challenge in Queensland, in Australia, with individuals with addiction, they're in a therapeutic process to, rehabilitation for their addiction. And as their brains are changing, they're more able to benefit from the therapeutic process, right? They need that piece as
Yeah.
well. So it's not the only piece, but it's a key piece, and that's what they're reporting. They now have insight. They can, you know, benefit from the therapy they're getting, and hopefully not, um, fall back into addiction. We're getting some pretty good results. So I think, it's complicated around the brain. It filters our perceptions and understanding of ourselves, our perceptions and understanding of other people, our perceptions and understanding of the world. So if there's anything that's off there, it's going to have broad impact, not just on reading, writing, and arithmetic, but it will have an impact, on how we operate in the world, how we engage with the world, how we interact with the world. And that's what we see as individuals go through this work. It's like, and that was my experience, is the world opens up. It becomes this open space that one can be excited about exploring and engaging with, and it's a very transformative process.
So amazing. So with the addictions over in Queensland, what types of addictions does this help at the moment? What's it working? Because I imagine with different addictions, is it a different pathway?
It could be, but I think addiction, um, the principle of addiction has very similar pathways. But these are drug and alcohol people that are struggling with drug and alcohol addiction in this
All right.
treatment program. And what we're seeing is obviously they need the therapeutic piece as well. Like it's not just my work, but that my work, because it's rewiring the brain to be able to have insight, is critical so that they can benefit from the other therapy that they're doing.
Oh, right, okay. So where else is it, like your latest? Where are you at the moment? What's the newest venture that you've got at the moment in the world, and whereabouts
Um,
is that set up?
yeah, so both in Europe, so working with some organizations in Europe, so Spain, uh, Ireland, Switzerland, trying to think. There might be some other countries there in Germany, and then also in the Middle East, so the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, exploring like putting it into schools in that region. I think we're in Kuwait in a learning center. Yeah, so yeah, and if people are interested, there's a map on the website, I believe, that shows kind of where we are in the world.
Yeah.
It's kind of like where's Waldo, but it's where's Arrowsmith. Yeah, and our goal is, as I said, to really make this work accessible. So, first, children that are struggling with learning, they overcome those struggles and can go on with the rest of their life without the difficulties.
Yeah.
And then also with young adults, any age, and people. We're just doing a study at a hospital in Boston, Brigham Women's, and Harvard, looking at people with traumatic brain injury. So, whether it's been concussions or accidents,
Yeah.
and showing what's happening in the brain as they go through this program. So, um, in another group that I'm interested in, we haven't got a research study yet, but the young offenders. So individuals that start to get into trouble with the juvenile justice system, like they're not yet in prison, but
Yeah.
potentially that could
That
be a
could be the route.
trajectory. And can
Yeah.
we interrupt that by rewiring their brains? So there's huge application for this work. And that's, as I said, my mission is to help all those that can benefit from this.
Yes. With your centres,
Mhm.
are these physical centres around the world, or because I know you got online as well? You're saying you're starting to do that
Yes,
online
yeah,
since the COVID. But
yes,
is
we
there
have,
any physical ones for people to
yes,
drop by?
yeah, we have physical centers, and they're all on the website. So if someone is interested, they can go in and look at where those are. And then there's also online. So if there isn't a physical center where somebody is, they can
Yeah.
always access the work online. And
Well, okay.
and we've done research to show, because I'm a big research geek. So we've done research to look at, do we get the same results if they're doing the work in person or doing it online? And we are seeing we're getting exactly the same results, because I'm
Oh wow.
committed to ensuring the the benefit of this work. So if we weren't getting the same results, then we'd have to do something to change that. But we're getting the same results, and I think it's because it's different. It's not like, we heard during COVID online learning wasn't very effective, but this is very different. It's not a teacher lecturing students or talking to students, it's the student engaging with the cognitive work. And the teacher is really a facilitator to support them, help them be engaged. And the research is showing we're getting the same results.
Amazing. Are you ever thinking about putting this into like universities for people to study and to get a qualification from this that could also work with you or your team in the future and start to spread this? Like over here, we have the NHS,
Mm-hmm.
which is the National Health Service, and we have
Mm-hmm.
a mental health division now. I was just wondering, is that something that this could possibly become in all major hospitals around? And like you've said, you want to get it into schools, into the national curriculum to maybe help some of those teachers teach those unfortunate children that aren't quite understanding or not quite getting what's going on the blackboard, so to speak. And they can identify the child. Right, okay, we identify this child rather than making fun of him right there and then. We're going to pull him to one side, speak to his parents, say, "Look, we've noticed this thing here with your child, not very, not concentrating enough, not understanding the work. Can we please put her into this class and learn
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Arrowsmith way, so to speak?"
Absolutely, that's a goal of ours, and we're definitely in conversations. It just things often take longer than I'd ideally want, but yes, I would like to make this available in universities as a course, to train people. Currently, all our training is done through Canada, but we have, again, COVID drove us to do our training online. So
Yeah,
somebody in Australia can get trained. They don't have to come to Canada, where originally they did have to come here. But I would love to see this as part of curriculum, and also in hospitals to support like the mental health aspect. So absolutely, yes.
that sounds like it's a bit like Patch Adams as well, isn't it? That kind of everyone laughed at him about because he wanted to make people laugh whilst they was ill because humour helps heal, and
Mm-hmm.
they all laughed at him, and he went off and did it, and it's still still open today, as from what I know, it's still
Mhm.
operating. So with the work that you're doing, have you had any awards? Have you won any awards for this from like the doctorates and stuff like that across the
Yeah.
world?
Well, from both of the universities I went to, so my undergraduate was the University of Guelph, and my graduate was University of Toronto. So University of Toronto, I won the Leaders and Legends, or Legends and Leaders Award for contribution to education, which was lovely. And from my undergraduate university, won an alumni of the year award for my work and contribution. So a few, but to me, it's nice to win those, but it's not doesn't motivate me. I mean, what motivates me is hearing from students around the world whose lives have been impacted by this work.
Yeah,
Like
no,
that's
100%. I just
yeah.
wanted you to be. I wanted to make sure that the world has actually rewarded you for this
Mm,
this gift
mm,
that you've given that can possibly help a young child
mm,
that's suffering and thinks I'm
mm.
different, I don't fit in.
Yeah.
Because that can go the wrong route. That can end up on the mental health spectrum and harming themselves.
Oh,
So
huge.
when they can, so when they identify that, you know what, Barbara Arrowsmith-Young did this and she
Mm,
changed her ways, and that gives me inspiration that
mm,
it's not all doom and gloom. There is a
yeah.
way out. It's going to be hard work,
Hmm.
but if it wasn't for Barbara, let's say it, inventing this thing for it
Hmm.
to work rather than on rats, but now on human beings, it's such a wonderful gift that you've left the world.
Mm. Well,
It's an amazing gift.
thank you. I mean, it feels like it's I don't know if the one believes in destiny, but it feels like everything in my life led me to this point. Like, being born into the family I was born into, with who my parents were,
Yeah.
being born with the learning difficulties that I had, being born with some of the strengths that I had. It just all led to where I am today, and I feel I feel very blessed that have been able to do this work and make this contribution.
So, as we're coming to the end, because I know you've got a rush,
Mm.
there is one question I do like to ask people because you're such a special person and you've created this thing. If this was or would ever go to like Netflix or become a movie,
Huh?
based on yourself, who would you like to play you?
Oh, Kate Blanchett.
That's a good one. I like that one.
I just
Yes.
think she is one of the most brilliant actresses in the world. I mean, she just blows me away. Yeah, so I would love Kate Blanchett.
That'd be amazing. And would you enjoy? I imagine you'd really enjoy that, knowing that it's been made into a movie and stuff like that
Mm,
as well. No, it's been
yeah.
absolutely wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Before you go, obviously, would you like to shout out anything? Tell any of the listeners where to contact you or any of your sites. We already know, so it's arrowsmith.ca is your main website, where you can do the questionnaire. Is that also your main one where people can find your facilities?
Yeah, that's the main one. Like we just did a complete overhaul on our website. So arrowsmith.ca is absolutely, and there's webinars there that you can learn more about the brain, learn more about how the brain plays out in your life, like socializing. There's a lot of really great material. There's, for the people that really like research, there's all of our research studies. For the people like to hear case stories from other people, those are there. There's also a whole section on mental health and learning difficulties. So I'd say just explore that website. There's a lot of information, and if you're interested in contacting a center, you know, somewhere in the world, all that information is on the website, and just reach out and contact them directly, or you can email. The email for my organization is there, but every center around the world that's offering this program is offering it as well as we're offering it in Toronto. We really ensure um, the quality of the delivery of the program, and we track everything. So, anywhere somebody goes, they will get the program at a level of excellence.
In the same sort of journey. So on these websites, if any listeners did go, is there a online chat mode on any of those where they could perhaps chat now, or is it just email or
Is
make
is
a
is
phone call?
currently, we're a little old school. It's currently email. We don't have any live bots that you can chat with. Down the road, possibly, but no,
Yeah.
now it's email. But there's, as I said, there's so much information there that um, a lot of questions will be answered by that. And there are people that you can reach out to around the world. And the other people, if people are interested, the book that I wrote, The Woman Who Changed Her Brain, is available on Amazon, and each chapter is about a different part of the brain or network in the brain, and it tells it through the science, but also through people's stories. And it's a really, it was an international bestseller. It's a great read. So I would encourage people, if they're interested in knowing more, that there's the book, and on our website, and I'll send you the links. There are two books that can be downloaded that the author made available. It was Howard Eaton, who's the author. And one's called The Brain Pioneer, and it's a great book. It was really written for young adults or adolescents, but it's a really good explanation of neuroplasticity in this work. And it's a free download. He's kindly made that available on the website. And then Brain School, which he also wrote, and it's more for educators, but again, it's available as a free download. So there are lots of free resources and assets on our website for people to get more information.
Yeah, definitely. I'll definitely be checking those out as well. And with your book, just so the listeners know again, it's called The Woman That Changed Her Brain.
Yeah,
Is that
yeah,
correct?
the woman who changed her brain, the woman who
And
changed her
that's
brain, and you just,
so
yeah, put it in. And I also did a TED talk, which is also called The Woman Who Changed Her Brain. So if you want to look at that again, it's just a kind of a 12-minute talk on like an overview of what the work is. But again, all that's on the website. So
yeah.
I encourage people, go in and spend some time on that website.
That's amazing. I actually watched the TED Talk. Obviously, I didn't want to let too much out because I wanted you to
Mhm.
be able to bring your wisdom across. Just before you go, the book that you got, are you going to record an audible version of that?
An audio, there is I believe
Is
there is an
there?
audio version of the book, I
Oh wow,
think.
okay. I
I'm pretty
quite
sure
like listening to them.
there is. So if again, it should be on our website. Like there's a section on the website of all the books, and yes. So I'm pretty sure that there's an audio version, but it's been a while since I've looked. So
It's good for people like me that drive for a living. We can listen
yeah,
to
you listen. Yeah,
exactly, yeah. And for me, I understand it more when I hear as well.
yeah,
So no, it's been absolutely amazing. I really hope you've enjoyed your time here.
yeah.
It was absolutely amazing. What's your next venture? You got anything coming up? Any
Uh,
seminars?
Well, more research. We're continuing to do some research, and one of our studies is being presented at a conference in San Francisco in May, which is great. Like so, it's you know continuing to do the research. Um, yeah, and starting a conversation about a documentary potentially to be made on the work. So who knows where that will go? But
My mind
you
works right.
mentioned it exactly. So hopeful that will work out. I mean, some good people, and they're very interested. So we'll see. But it's really um, building awareness for this work. So I really thank you, Jermaine, for inviting me to the podcast, because I think the more people that understand um, the possibility of neuroplasticity, and how, to me, it's incredibly promising to know that we don't have to accept that our brain is fixed, because it's not.
It's a great way to end it as well.
Mhm.
It's amazing. You are the proof of the pudding straight away. You are so intelligent, a lot more intelligent than me.
Mhm.
you know, your words are articulated as well, and I'm just me.
Well,
Honestly, thank you so much for coming on. I really do appreciate it. I'll spread the word as much as I can my end.
mhm.
We'll get it out as much as we can on Facebook, Instagram, but now on YouTube as well. As soon as this is out, I'll let you know. We're starting this in April, so it's coming back out in April. The year
Okay.
anniversary is the 12th of April, so I may put the episode 1, which was done 2 weeks ago, and
Mhm.
then it'll be your one towards the end of April. But I will
Okay.
send you a copy of this
Thank you.
link as well, so you can get to see it.
Okay. Well, yeah, we can listen and promote it. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Tremaine,
No,
and
thank
all
you.
the best. And thank you for doing the work that you do. It's really
I'm
important.
trying. It's hard sometimes, but yeah, I get some great guests on.
Yeah.
You would really get on with one of my guests. I won't say his name, but if you do listen, you'll straight away.
Okay.
Let's just say my first interview with him, it was in Brazil, and he's a very clever doctor.
Okay.
And you sound a lot like him. You come across the same articulate. You'd really get on with him. Really nice
Okay.
bloke.
I'll
Right.
check that out. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you, Jermaine.
No, thank you very much for joining us. And again, as always, people, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode. If you have enjoyed it, please do remember to like, subscribe, and share with your fellow friends. And in the description below, you will see the links for Barbara Arrowsmith-Young, who was on here today. What an amazing woman. She really does deserve a round of applause. So I'm going to do that. And I hope you guys listening are also amazed at what this I'm going to say young lady, right? Because she looks very young. So I'm going to say this young lady has accomplished. She was 26 years old when she came up with this. What were we doing at 26? Take care, guys, and see you all next week.
Thank you.
Very much for tuning in this week, guys. Really do appreciate it. If you want to reach out, you can do on all of the social medias and even the podcast sites. Wherever you listen to your podcast, just search Still Worth the Journey. And remember, you are still worth the journey.